Whoa.
My sunglasses and my book.
I took my daughter in to have open heart surgery about 8 weeks ago, and we did everything we could to prepare mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and the surgery went really well, and we were really happy with how everything went, except around 11 o'clock she started having some problems. 11 p.m. she started having some issues breathing, and she was in a lot of pain, and by 11:30 they were ordering a chest x-ray to try to identify if there were any things going on around the heart, fluid buildup, fluid around the lungs, all sorts of a myriad of issues that could pop up after open heart surgery. From 1 minute to the next, things changed pretty quickly. Her oxygen saturation levels were decreasing, her blood pressure was falling and up and down, her breathing wasn't deep and clear. It was very shallow and rapid. And in the next moment, there was what felt like 30 doctors, nurses, cardiologists in our room, and they were saving Gemma. And when I mean they were saving her, she was crashing. It was the longest 4 minutes of my life. They asked us to leave the room. We stood right outside the room with big glass doors watching them do an emergency intubation, put a breathing tube in, and they saved her. And we watched for 4 minutes while they did everything that they could to save her life. Looking at that moment, I see a child who's dying, and my whole body, the insides of my body were shaking in a way that I've never experienced. But at the same moment, I had a vision when she was born, and the vision was I saw her at her wedding, and I saw her in a white dress. And so at the same moment that I saw a child that was dying, I knew that she would survive. I knew with all of my heart that they would do everything that they could, because she's the strongest little girl that I know. After they got the breathing tube in, her body was sedated, her body had a chance to rest, and the breathing tube allowed her body to rest without having the difficulties of breathing with the pain of the chest incision and the pain of the chest tubes for draining all the fluids in her chest. The next day, they were having trouble with a line in her neck. They lost a line in her neck and wasn't reading the blood pressures accurately, and they had to do a cath. They brought her into the cath lab, and they got a new line in her leg. It came with some difficulties because her veins were so constricted, because she was on vasopressors and epi, because of the issues that she had and the emergency intubation, and she had nearly coded. She developed rhabdo in her left calf, so the blood was kept up around her chest, her heart, her vital organs, and her left leg lost some blood flow, and she developed rhabdo. And then from rhabdo, she developed compartment syndrome. And basically, compartment syndrome is when you have swelling or muscle damage and your leg swells, in her case, her calf. You have the fascia around the muscle is rigid and not flexible. So as the swelling increases, the fascia squeezes back, and you can lose blood flow to the foot, and you can lose a pulse. And if this happens, they have to amputate the leg. And so we acted quickly, obviously with the help of the surgery team at Phoenix Children's Hospital. And they did an emergency fasciotomy. Now, she had a 7-inch incision on both sides of her left calf. When she came back, I was floored. I could not believe the state of her leg. And she had a wound vac attached to her leg where they had performed the fasciotomy to suck any fluids out, to keep pressure around the calf. And when she woke up, I can only imagine how she felt. Just the confusion of just waking up from heart surgery and anesthesia, and then having an incredible amount of pain in her left leg, just feeling like she was hit by a bus, and not being aware or understanding what really happened to her body. And there were nurses, there were doctors and cardiologists coming in, and they were touching her and checking her, and she became so battle weary and developed so much anxiety about people coming in. And when she woke up and was finally coming to, you could tell that she didn't know who she was anymore. That she lost that little fighter inside of her. That little girl that was a warrior, that just learned to climb a tree on her own, who could do everything on her own, do everything for herself. She lost who she was. She didn't remember who she was anymore. And that was the most painful thing for me to see. We could get over heart surgery. We could heal a leg injury. But to see her not remember who she was the most painful thing for me. It's the thing that broke me the most. It's the thing that ultimately brought me to my knees in the hospital. And she started disassociating herself from situations when doctors and nurses were coming in and touching her. It was like I was looking at her in her eyes, and then she was gone. And I'm snapping my finger trying to get her attention, and she's looking right through me. And she's like she wasn't there anymore. It's like she was a shell. And I was desperate to find out how I can help. And as I thought about it, I thought she needs to see who she is. She needs to remember who she is. So I created a short movie of clips of her before surgery, of her running and playing and laughing and jumping and being funny and silly, because she needed to remember who she was. She needed to remember that fighter. And I told her every day in the hospital, every day, I looked at her and I told her, who's my strong girl? Who's my warrior? And when I first asked her, she started crying. And she said, no. She said, no. No. She didn't want to say it was her. She started crying because she didn't feel like that strong girl anymore. She didn't feel the power that she had. She didn't feel that strength inside. And I knew, my intuition was telling me, I needed to bring her back to that. It's why I created the videos for her, to remember who she was. I worked with her and worked with her and worked with her to finally get her to say, when I asked her, who's my strong girl? Through tears, she said me. Through tears, when I asked her, who's my warrior girl? She said me. She lost who she was, and I had to remind her. I had to get her to remember who she was. When they pull the breathing tube out, it's really sore on the throat. You have a raspy voice, and when they pulled it out, she let out this cry. And she said, about 12 times in a row with Stephanie and I by her side. I can't. I can't. I can't. And she just repeated it. She felt like she couldn't do it. She was broken. Her body felt wrecked. And she just kept saying, I can't. I can't. I can't. And Stephanie and I were right there by her side telling her, you can do it, baby. You can do it, baby. You got this. And after about the 12th time of her saying she can't, she let out a big sigh. And she said, I did it. I did it. Gemma, thank you for fighting so hard. Thank you for remembering who you are.